Okay, so just a little recap on building rake walls. Obviously, if you're an experienced framer, you already know how to do it. But if you're new or if you're doing your first one, there's a few pointers I use, or a few tricks. Not really tricks, but just kind of how you do it. There's a couple different ways to do it. Um, I quit framing in '95, so there wasn't much internet. It's not like nowadays you can just go on the internet and get your calculations. Um, Most people, I guess, nowadays use, well, we used calculators back then. We had construction calculators. And nowadays I keep hearing, I think there's one called a Construction Master 5, something like that, or Construction Pro, something with a 5 in it. That's what a lot of guys use to get their calculations for. You can, like, if you've got 16-inch centers, you can enter information into it that'll just give you the in succession, how much you add to each one as you go every 16 inches. And then of course you got to enter your calculations for your windows and door openings and stuff, which don't necessarily fall in the 16-inch centers. um, if you're running production, it's a better way to do it, maybe a little bit faster. But I'm not running production here. I'm just one guy framing. But even when I was running production, I still did it this way sometimes, especially when there's all these openings. This thing is all openings, just like this one here that I already did. It's a lot of openings, right? So, so what I do is I get the height of as I said this before in a previous one about rake walls. This is kind of like a recap. So I get the height of to the top of the top plate. Okay, so that's 97.5 inches, and then I have already snapped my chalk line 3.5 inches in. Right, so the bottom plate will follow that. I've toenailed the bottom plate in, but before I toenail the bottom plate in, when I've snapped the line where the inside edge of the wall is going to be, I measure from that line, because that's what your floor line is. That's where your floor is going to be, right? So when the wall is up, so I measure up 97.5 inches, and that includes the double top plate. Now here, I've already cut my double top plate, so I've got both of them cut already. I just haven't put them in because I need to be able to nail the studs in. So after all the studs are nailed in, then I can put the double top plate on. But that 97.5 inches needs to be to this point here inside the wall, right there to your double top plate. And then I just, when I toenail this one, I put a couple of toenails in just to hold so it doesn't start moving around when you're cutting your joists. So your studs. So it's, as you can see, it's back 1.5 inches. I mean, you can use a piece of blocking as a guide, put that on the line, and then I put a couple toenails, which I'll take out before I go to lift the wall. So and then I go online, use one of the free online calculators, and I go, okay, this is a 412 pitch. The house is 30 feet wide, so you take half the distance, because you want to find out what your rise is, and you want to add that to the 97.5 inches to get your height there at your peak. So you go, okay, so half of 30 is 15, but then your wall is your wall here, your rake wall is starting in 3.5 inches in from the outside of the house. So really, instead of 15 foot being the halfway mark, it's actually 14 foot 8.5 inches, because 14 foot 8.5 inches to here, it's 15 all the way to here, but our rake wall is starting here. Now you can put your rake wall up first, in which case your measurement will start from here. But anyway, so you enter that information: 14 foot 8.5, 412 pitch, and I think if I remember right, it's 4 foot 10 and 13/16 inches. So you add the 4 foot 10 and 13/16 to the it would be 8 foot 1.5 inch, because it's 97. You add those two together, it basically comes out to, I think it's 13 foot 5/16 inch, but I don't get too much into 16ths, so I just made it 13 foot 3/8. Okay, so 13 foot 3/8 from that chalk line that we have marked here, that that runs the whole length here for our bottom plate. So you measure to here. First, I also measured across from both sides to find the exact center. All right, so the center was here, and then I measured up, and then I made a mark, and then a pencil mark, and then I put a nail in there, and then I pulled a chalk line down to that 97 mark you made there at 97.5 inches up, and then also I made another mark 97.5 inches up from the chalk line. From the chalk line on where the bottom plate's going to go, and then I pulled a line here, and then I just fill in the studs along the way. With this, like I said, I put a couple of toenails in here just to keep it from moving around, and it might be warped, or whatever. So so when you're measuring by yourself, okay, so what I do is, to get the measurements of my layout, whether it's the 16 incher for all the marks that I need to make on these plates to put in my windows, my doors, my wall intersections, and my 16-inch center layout, is you have to measure off the inside of the OSB here. You're measuring off of there because your layout starts from here. So in order to do, if you're with another person, it's easy. They can just hold the tape measure up against the OSB and keep moving it along as you make your marks, as you're coming up your rise. But when you're by yourself, you got to figure out ways of doing stuff. So what I do is, so I put some blocks here, just some blocks of wood, some scraps of wood. I put them here to support the tape measure, and then I just go to here, right? Measure off of here. There's my first layout, and then the next one for my window opening. This is for window opening. There's a trimmer stud there that'll support. There'll be a header here, and then I keep moving it along, Well, as you start getting out farther, the tape measure is going to want to sag. So I have some 2x4s here, some blocks. See, the blocks support the tape measure so that I can make my marks here. And then I got to keep moving it. Along, and these blocks just support the tape measure. Otherwise, it's going to want to sag down here. It's going to give you inaccurate measurement. Another thing that will give you an inaccurate measurement is when you're holding the tape measure, whether somebody's holding it or you're doing it the way I'm doing it, is you want to make sure that the tape measure is perpendicular to this wall. Because if you start going like this or this, the more you go off of being perpendicular with the wall you're measuring from, the more inaccurate your measurements are going to be. So, if you start going like this, obviously your measurement's going to be different. It's going to be incorrect. So you want to hold it as perpendicular as you can. Now, if you have somebody holding it, you can just tell them, hey, hold it perpendicular. You can look down and you can see if the tape measure, that's wrong. That's pretty close right there. So if you're doing it yourself and you get down farther, you just have to do it by eye. I mean, there's just no other way. You have to kind of know if you're getting off this way. You want to hold it perpendicular so that when you intersect the tape measure here, your measurements are accurate for putting your marks for your layout. On the bottom plate, it's easy because it's just a straight line. So you can use you see the line in the plywood? Now that's perpendicular to the wall. You can even use those as a guide. You can see there that's pretty perpendicular. If you start going to see that, you can see that's not perpendicular to the line in the plywood, or that's not, right? So you're not holding it correctly. You want to kind of hold it like that. Use that as a guide, especially when you start getting farther and farther away. You start getting way out here. That line in the plywood, But any line on the plywood will help your accuracy. I can just do it by eye because I've been doing this for years, but you know, everybody's different. So that's how I do that. It's pretty simple. It's not as complicated as it sounds like. It's just you know, you just got to think about what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. You know, you always approach stuff. Okay, what am I doing? What do I need to do to get there? And what's the easiest way to do it, or the fastest way? Which also means the best way. You know, you don't want to cut corners. Anyway, so that's how I do that layout. So, like I said, you measure the height of your total height of your wall, right? And then you measure that up. You put a mark there at your total height. You pull off of the chalk line that you snapped, that your wall will follow, and that you'll adjust the wall. Once you stand the wall up, so sometimes you gotta take the sledgehammer and move it around a bit. You move the 1/4 inch here or there, so that the inside of the bottom plate follows that chalk line. And then find out what your run is, your total run is, and then use some sort of a calculating device to calculate that additional height over and above your lowest wall height, which in my case was 4 feet 10 and 13/16 inch. I added that to 97.5 inch, and it came up with basically 13 feet and 3/8 inch. Put a nail there, you know, make a mark. You got to find the halfway point, right? Because your peak is directly in the middle, so you got to measure across from wall to wall. And it should be like this house is 30 feet wide. If you did your walls correctly and you snapped your chalk lines on each side, it should be 30 feet minus 7 inches, 3.5 for this side and 3.5 from that side. But anyway, so you find your center point, make a mark, put a nail in. Well, I guess you don't have to if you got somebody that can hold it. I mean, I put a nail in because I'm by myself, so I have to be able to hold one end. Anyway, and then I snap that line, and that's my guide for the top of my double plate. So that's kind of the scenario, and then getting the measurements for your layout on the angle wall. You're just pulling off of the inside of the OSB sheeting and making your marks. And then when I make my marks, I've taken my speed square. I'll show you. So I've taken my speed square and I put it. You can see where the line is. Now that's a C. That means it's a cripple stud. I use T for trimmer, or you can call it a jack stud. But I put a J there or whatever, and then I just do 1 slash for king studs. Anyway, so whatever your marks are for your studs, I just do like this, and I make a pencil mark, so that way, when I'm measuring the length of each stud as I go, so I'm putting the tape measure down, and then I get where that line is, and I get my measurement. Now I measure on my short point. You can measure your short point or your long point. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can put the pencil mark on the long point side. It doesn't matter. You just need a measurement. So here we got like 102, basically. So that's how I do my measurements, and I go along. Now that's if it's a full length stud. This is a cripple, so you know it's you won't know what it is until you put your header in. But we're just pretending this is a full length stud. Anyway, so you measure to that line. You get your measurement. That's your short point because it's the shortest side of the stud. The shortest side of the stud, and the long point is on the other side of the stud. And then I cut. So if it was 102, then I cut at 102, and put it in, and then I nail them in. I always do my window, door, and wall intersection layout first on my plates. In this case, because it's a rake wall, you can only do the bottom one by itself, and then this one you have to go through the procedure I just showed you in order to get it in place. And then you got if it's a regular wall, you can lay your top plates on top of these, and you can mark them both at the same time. But anyway, so I always do that, and then I come back and do my 16 inch on center layout, because otherwise it can get confusing. Like here, my 16 inch on center layout, that's why I have 3 here. Okay, so I have 2 because this is where the 16 inch center layout was. And the same thing on this side just worked out there. It's unusual, but that's how it worked out. Now, do I have to really put these here? I don't know, I guess not. I'm just used to, I follow 16 inch layout no matter what. It's always maintained, just like on this wall. You know, like down below where the cripples are. I mean, it just gets maintained all the way through. It's easier for your drywallers too, and it's also easy for your trim guy when he comes and he's expecting something to be there to nail the base molding and it's not there. But anyway, and then because this I just used 2 pieces because I just scabbed it on because it just needs to be there for nailing. Right, so it's a good way to use up some shorter pieces. And so I'm going to continue filling in here. I usually start from one side and just work my way all the way across. Now normally, as I had said on a previous video about putting up walls, I normally before I would like put this one on or this one, I might cut this one and leave it laying loose. I put my headers in so I can nail in from both sides. Now I can still nail in, but now I'm going to have to put in a bunch of toenails. You know, it's a little bit more of a hassle, but I was getting dark last night. I just want to get something done. So anyway, so that's why I kind of went against my own. You know, I mean, I'm not getting paid by the hour, so you can kind of do what you want. Plus, it's my house. I mean, I'm not working for a home builder, right? So he's not standing there waiting for me to be done so he can get the plumbers in. You know, I'm moving at my own pace. But yeah, so normally I wouldn't put this on. I would have cut my headers and nailed those in from the side and then put this on instead of having to come back and toenail the headers. I'm using 2x4 headers here because they're not picking up any weight. I mean, there's no weight on a rake wall, right? It's not holding up floor joists. It's not holding up roof rafters or ceiling joists. So it's just holding up this little bit of plywood that's above it. So I just use a double 2x4. It's a 3-foot opening. I mean, you're not gonna. There might be codes on it. See, there's no codes here. I mean, you can kind of do what you want. So you're not gonna break 2 2x4s on edge that are only 3 feet long. I mean, you take a 3-foot 2x4, just one, and put it on edge, and you'd be surprised how much weight you could put on that thing. Right, you could put hundreds of pounds, right? Hundreds of pounds. Well, even if there's roof rafters on it, you don't get hundreds of pounds of pressure in a 3-foot opening. I mean, the roof doesn't weigh that much, and you're only picking up half the weight of the roof because technically the ridge is picking up the other half of the weight. So anyway, I just use double 2x4s. It's cheaper, it's easier. Like I said, the reason I had done this as 2x8 is because it's a continuous header. So I wanted it for 2 2x4 would flex too much. It'd be too flexible. And plus, these are my concrete forms. They're left over from my concrete forms. So it's a good way to use them up. I mean, if my concrete forms were 2x12s, then these would be 2x12s, right? So they're not 2x8s because I'm worried about all this weight up above, because there really isn't any. And then as you can see here, my wall intersections, I was able to use up scraps. It's a good way to use up scrap lumber, even lumber with nails in it. I mean, the nails are turned in, so they'll never be seen. But it just gives you something to nail the wall intersections too. And there's one more wall intersection here because this is a bedroom. This is the hallway to here. This is a closet for this bedroom here. So that's kind of what I'm laying out here. Anyway, I think that's it. It's just kind of a recap in case you didn't see the other video, or you just want to recap. It's kind of how it all goes together. And then I have a video on raising this wall with Qualcraft wall jacks and how they work for rake walls just like they work for straight walls. I have a video of when I was lifting this one with some pointers. You know, it's just a little bit different because as you lift your studs that you're using for the wall jacks will start to angle. You know, they'll start to angle inward. They don't stay straight like this. They start creeping inward as you go up higher because you're hooking an angled top plate, and so you just have to add another block so they don't kick out. Which if you watch the other video, you'll see what I'm talking about. On this house, I put the first rafter. I notched it for my outlookers. Outlookers are the 2x4s that'll stick out and hold up the overhang. I left my cutout for my my ridge board. I can't even think. My ridge board. So my ridge board will pocket in up there. These are all done. They're OSB from the outside all the way up. Because I put this wall up second after these, I couldn't run my 2x6 rafter all the way down and into where, you know, my overhang part of it. I had to keep it inside of this wall, but I'll just add a piece on for my overhang. It's not a big deal. So when I lifted the wall, I was actually lifting it off of the wall jacks are actually hooked onto that 2x6, which is fine. It's better if you can hook the plate, and if you're doing a really heavy wall, you might not want to do that. You might want to just get the wall up there because the wall jacks will hook the plate instead of hooking the 2x6. But that's up to you. You have to make that decision. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all I can think of for now. All right, back to work.